Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm delighted that we're visiting Dan Friday. And when we meet Dan, we're going to find him in his home in Seattle, Washington. Just to give you some background on Dan, he is a native of the Lumi Nation in the Pacific Northwest. As a matter of fact, Dan has lived his entire life in the Pacific Northwest. And I think that we'll see that some of you will know his work, and for some of you it's new, but his artistic vision has strong influences from his Indigenous roots. So for over 20 years, Dan has worked for Dale Chihuly, Paul Marioni, Preston Singletary, and as a matter of fact, he's been on the Chihuly team since 2000. And he's still very much a valued member of that team, even though he has his own independent studio. As a matter of fact, that's how I first met Dan. I was visiting the boathouse in Seattle with clients. And a thank you to Susan Marabito, who works with Dale, and for Dale as well, for introducing me to Dan. She wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to meet him when I was there and hopefully represent him. And I've really been delighted to do that for a number of years now. So working on a team, I think, was an important thing for Dan. And he'll say that he was able to perfect his technical skills, and he had the insight of what it was like to work with other artists and also to be able to work with the public. He trained and taught at Pilchuck, the University of Washington, and Haystack. When I was reading about Dan and about his vision, the one thing that really stood out to me, it really touched me actually, is that he said that when he saw glass blowing for the first time, that he felt very grown up, but he also felt that he had finally figured out what he wanted to do when he was a grown up. So before we meet Dan, I just want to mention that we are going to have a Q&A. And so if you have any questions, please write them into the chat line. And at the end of the program, Daniel will address your questions. So it is my pleasure to say hello to Dan Friday. And I know he's there. There's an image of his piece. There he is. Dan, how are you?
Hey, good. Sandra, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, looks hey, like, everybody out there.
Far and wide. So you have people today, a lot from Toronto and in Canada, lots of people from the States as well. I'm sure there's people who would like to shout out to you and say hello. They probably know you or perhaps have collected your work.
Oh, great. Well, hey, out there in virtual time and space. Yeah, this is a great avenue. And thanks again, Sandra, for the opportunity and all the work that you and Daniel have done to put this together. It's
a pleasure. It's always great to see you. So maybe you'll just catch us up on what you've been doing. I mean, how have you been managing during the pandemic, during COVID? How's it affected you?
It has affected us all, really. And like I said, we all, nobody needs that explained to them. But I am feeling really fortunate and grateful to have an artistic practice. It really, it's something that helps me kind of stay in my lane and kind of control the things that I can. I tried my hand at hobby gardening, and thank God I've got this glass practice to fall back on. I've got a studio at my house. I was in Fremont, which is down kind of a historic neighborhood in Seattle for about 15 years. And a few years ago, I bought a house north of Seattle in Shoreline with a big building. And so luckily I've been able to occupy my time. And I think we're all trying new avenues to find out how to work. A lot of people work from home on their computers. Fortunately, I can work on my shows still at my studio. So
actually, we visited you. I think it was a year and a half ago. It seems like 10 years ago that I came to your home and to your studio, which was in the garage with a group of people from Toronto and Montreal. Yeah, that was great fun. I
Yeah.
remember your car collection.
Yes,
You,
I got
yeah.
cars. I'm not allowed to have quite as many cars as I used to, but I do. Yeah, I share that. And my son, my oldest son, will be 21 in 2 weeks, and he's a car head. And yeah, I feel grateful.
21.
Yeah,
You actually don't look old enough to have a 21-year-old. I didn't realize he was that old.
yeah. And so, yeah, so I've been doing that, staying busy, working, working in the community as much as I can with as carefully as we can. We've started working. We've got COVID protocols at Dale's, and we've done some work for him. I know you just had a show of Dale's work, and I heard through the grapevine that did pretty well, and so that's awesome. I'm glad that people are finding ways to get out and enjoy art even in this time. Again, I've got a few shows. Everything seems like everything last year was canceled and pushed to June of this year. Everybody 10 months ago figured that by June that the world would be in a different place, but I am just kind of juggling all of last year's shows. I had a big show canceled, a big residency canceled at the Corning Museum. That was a big one. It was about a month-long residency, and it would have been a great cap on the year, but I think that we're going to try and push that into 2022. And so there's just lots of shuffling and rescheduling, but all in all, like I said, I've been well. My family's healthy, and yeah, thanks for asking.
Oh, no, you're welcome. You were telling me when I spoke to you the other day that you have a really large commission coming up. I don't know if now's the time to talk about that, but I was pretty impressed with it. I thought you might like to mention that.
Yeah, so I was selected. I'm under contract now, so it's okay. I don't like to talk about those things too preemptively, and luckily the final installation won't be until 2024. It's with the Seattle Aquarium they're redoing the whole waterfront, and so I've got a sizable budget and a lot of resource available to me. They've got an architectural firm and a bunch of city planners. So it's I feel really grateful to be counted in the number of new coming Seattle waterfront.
Wow. Okay, well, I hope to be back there for sure in 2024, definitely to see that project. And what about your museum shows? I know some of them got canceled, but don't you have 2 that are up right now?
Yeah, and they've all seemed to be pushed into the same
Okay.
What happened? Okay. But so one is opening in April. Well, first, I guess March. There's one opening in March that's been postponed a few times. It's at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture, and it's with Preston and Raven, Sky River, and it kind of focuses on Native Americans in glass. They actually just released a book called what's the name of the book? Clearly Indigenous, and it's just came out on Amazon, and so I feel again really grateful to be counted in that number too. It's a show I've been working on for 3 years now. It's been a long time coming, and so they've decided to go with March, open or close or whatever it is, because it'll be up I think for over a year, and then hopefully it will travel. And then the next show is at the Museum of Northwest Art, which is in Washington State. And it's kind of a solo show. It's such a large museum space that I'm going to be curating a bunch of work from other Coast Salish artists, especially the ones that are weavers, because I'm really inspired a lot, as you'll see in my show, by weavers and just some of the traditional Coast Salish art practices.
So I guess there is a basket of yours that's sitting behind me, and that would have been influenced by the weaving that you're talking about.
Yeah, and my Aunt Fran. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a beautiful series. Aunt Fran, I think you tell us a little bit about Aunt Fran maybe when we see some of your slides.
Oh, see, Aunt Fran. She was huge, and yeah, you'll see her coming up here shortly.
She was huge in your life.
Yeah. And just kind of pivotal in me just kind of launching my own career. Glass is a hard thing to find your voice in. It's just one of those things that, it takes so many years of it's like being a virtuoso musician, and just reading all the books about playing an instrument won't get you any closer to being able to play an instrument. I mean, I think it's just 10,000 hours sort of thing.
You said that when you first saw glass, you knew, I mentioned it before, that you knew this is what you want to do when you grew up. What was the first glass that you saw that made that impact on you?
Well, and I think a lot of it was just the process. I was a mechanic, and just seeing the teamwork and being creative. I had worked on cars, and working with my hands was pretty normal.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing creation versus repair,
Mm-hmm.
and just being able to see some of being able to create. A lot of times when you're a mechanic, you're just working on. You meet people on their worst day of the week, and you've got to explain to them that it's like, how much you thought that was going to cost? And so, when I first saw it, I just knew that this was a path for me. I've always been an artist. I went to a pretty prominent art school growing up called the Northwest School in Seattle. And just it just didn't seem really pragmatic to like, well, I need to feed myself. So a career in making art, it just, it really took a back burner when I was, I kind of moved out when I was 16, and just to take care of myself, as just really seemed like it was time to get to work. And then when I walked into a glass shop when I was 20, I'm like, you mean people make a living doing this? Sign me up, and I'll sweep the floors, and I'll show up early and stay late. And glass has that thing, I think, that keeps it so pure. Again, like being a musician, the 10,000 hours, the proof is in the pudding. It's not about your good looks or your charming personality. Like it's a measurable product. And I just saw a way for me to, I was just really contented when I saw being able to produce like that and have some creative outlet. Mm-hmm. And again, I'll go into it later, but it, that my first time I started was in a factory, and I was ready to make small gift store items for the rest of my life. I'm like, just anything to put down the wrenches and get out of the tow truck and the life. Right. It was really cool.
You paid your dues.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Dan, do you want to show us some of the slides that you have? Should we put those up and you can tell your story? Yeah. I know you have some great ones to show.
Cool. Let's see here. We've practiced this. I'm sure I can get it.
I'm glad I'm not doing it.
Optimize, there we go. And then share. And then if I did that wrong, you guys will let me know, right?
Well, it does say Dan Friday. We got that far.
Great. Yeah, so I'll you just let me know, and I'll start shooting from the hip.
Well, yeah, why don't you do that? You've got an interesting story to tell, and I did see the slides or some of them, and I enjoyed them a lot. I think everyone else will.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, thanks again for everybody for being here. Aishka CM, Nachalacha CM. Thanks for listening to my story. So let's see here. Oh man, what did I do? Yeah, there we go. So yeah, my name is Dan Friday. You can see in this picture, you can see Lummi Island. This is one of the easternmost islands of the San Juan Island chain, right below Vancouver. And the Coast Salish and Lummi and Saanich, the Coast Salish or Strait Salish is what they are more regionally called. That extends into Vancouver. But this little, you won't be able to see the cursor, but Bellingham Bay there, that's right where the modern day Lummi Reservation is. But the Lummi tribe is compiled of natives from all of the San Juan Islands there, really particularly San Juan and Orcas. Let's see here, boom, there. And so my story wouldn't be complete if I didn't bring in my sister. So my sister is somebody I've worked with for 25 years now. It has been quite a while and a lifetime, I'd say. We've known each other that long. And she's also another great glass artist. This is my family, my brothers and my Aunt Pauline and my sister in the front there. This is my great-great-grandfather, Heitaluk, OCM, or Heitaluk, his name is Frank Hilaire, more commonly known, and he's a signer of the Point Elliott Treaty. This is his wife and one of his first families. He had 3 wives and 22 children, and he lived in the longhouse in an old way. And these are old pictures that I think are really special to our family, so I enjoy sharing them. Here he is again later in life. This is in the 1890s. Again, he signed the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. This is him and his wife, again, 1890. And I don't know if you can see in this slide, his drum has what's called the Hilaire bear. And
Yes.
very typically, like in Vancouver and Southeast Alaska, tribes, they have what's called a clan, or like a Thunderbird clan. And that's not the same in Coast Salish, but our family, very similar, is the bear family. And I'm kind of a bear, if you know already, in stature anyway. This is Haytalak in his canoe in Bellingham Bay, and it's a Nootka style canoe, and Nootka is from the east side of Vancouver Island. But this was the most prominent style of utilitarian canoe in the area at the time. It's sort of like the Toyota Prius of the circa 1890. You can tell by the front, the bow, the quaquadits, or the wolf head in the front. This is Haytalak Frank Hilaire's son, Joseph Hilaire, my great-grandfather, and you'll see him again more in here. Joseph is a family name. It's my middle name. My son is named Joseph, and I've probably got about 10 or 12 cousins named Joseph, and or Edna. And so you'll see a lot of homage to our elders in our community. And this is the dance troupe, the Setting Sun Dance Troupe. And again, they were really big in it, kind of bringing that cultural exposure to the settlers. My great grandfather Joe was really pivotal and kind of getting. Here he is, another picture of Joseph Hilaire. He was largely responsible for having the unions accept Native workers in the Puget Sound area. Here's him and his wife, Agnes Price. And yeah, these are great pictures. I've only got a few more of these, and I'll get into my glasswork, but I just like to share this history.
Yeah.
I feel like it is so rich. Here he is later in life, working on one of his totem poles. This is Bellingham Bay, or Lummi, one of the Lummi fishing villages right in Bellingham Bay. This is Cousin Harry, because I got jokes, and I try and keep these things light. But this is Hales Pass today. And I feel really fortunate growing up in the Northwest, because there is still this strong sense of Native community here. Whereas in, a lot of parts, when I travel through Florida and the Southwest, that you see names of the streets and stuff like that, but you don't see these communities at the same volume that you do as the Southwest, or, just the West Coast. As colonization moved westward, there's still stronger vestiges of these communities. And so this is the annual canoe fest called the Stammish at Lummi, and tribes come from up and down the West Coast to compete and canoe pulling. And there's another thing called the Canoe Journey, which my Aunt Mary Ellen and the Longhouse community was really large in helping start. This is a glass cut cameo panel of Hales Pass made by my sister. And this is, again, I'll kind of get into a little bit more of my family. And it's just, I come from a long family of artists, and feel like my sister and I are really trying to kind of carry on that tradition. This is some of her work. This was made in upstate New York. It's now actually going to be installed in Santa Fe in May. So again, I come from a fishing people. I love fishing. At this point in my life, I was talking to my good friend Jim Longrain, and I just eat, breathe, and sleep glass or art. And it's like, I almost have, like, what hobbies do I even have during this COVID time? I'm like, try gardening, but fishing is the other thing that is really dear to me, and is a big part of who I am. And my family, I got into cars. This is when I'm like, I think I was probably 16. You can see my tow truck in the back. Convertibles. I had lots of cars. I was a mechanic. And when I first started here at the Glass Eye in Seattle, I met a lot of a lot of characters that had come through there. It was a factory, again, making like gift store items. Preston, you can see in this picture, it's a picture of me. I'm casting the sword for the totem pole at Pilchuck. And Preston was large, Paul Marion was large, Dante, the whole legacy of the Seattle version of the American studio glass movement. A lot of it really, you know, there's definitely a chapter in the glass eye in that whole saga. Pilchuck obviously is a big part of it too. This is at Pilchuck working with my dear friend Nancy Callahan for an artist named Wendy Yamura. Dale, if you don't recognize Dale, he's on the right, and that's Colin Powell in the middle. And I started working with Dale in 2000. So it's been about 20 years. Again, I feel really fortunate to be part of the people that are still there as they've changed the size of the company quite a bit. And I've really cut my teeth there quite a bit. Dale has been a huge resource for me. I mean, I can't tell you, you couldn't pay at a university for 20 years of behind the scenes of an art career with just a living legacy, really, like Dale. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'm endlessly fortunate. And actually yesterday I was working with his son, Jackson, a friend of my friend Jason, who also works there. We were, he's really getting into glass, and he's, I feel honored to just still be there and working with these guys. These are some of my first works. God, these pictures were taken so long ago, so they're probably really poor. But I'll just kind of blaze through these. These are canoe paddles. Those are about 3 feet. This is a cameo cut tile again. It says my first fishing boat from my Uncle Reuben, here's Uncle Reuben. These are some of the first vessels I made, and you'll see this symbol a lot in my work. It's how I sign my work, actually. But these are just kind of the early pieces. This is my studio. It's right underneath that rocket ship in Fremont down there. But this is where I started I guess it was 15 years ago. Yeah, I had a studio in downtown Fremont. And again, I was still a mechanic, and you can see the influence of the gears and the cars and nuts and bolts. This piece is called Gearhead. There's a skull underneath the bell jar. And, I really was still trying to figure out, what was my voice. I was making these pieces, and I really did like them, but they didn't resonate with me 100%. But, it takes a long time to create and find that voice in glass. It's, I wouldn't necessarily say it's refining, but it's ever evolving. The way I make things, even today, a lot of the work I make changes over from year to year. And, again, these are some of the early, you can see the gear motif, and this is a teepee, but you can still see the gears in a lot of the work I do. This is a canoe paddle, a cast. It's a full-size canoe paddle, but you can see the gear work. You can kind of, and then this show was in 2001, I believe. It was my first show at a Daybreak Star Cultural Center, which was really big around here because it was Fort Lawton and the Native Americans. There was a AIM movement at Alcatraz, and there was another one at Fort Lawton here where the Army gifted the natives a cultural center there. And so this show is at that place. And it's one of my first shows, again, in glass and in the art world. These are called Serenades. You dropped a bomb on me. And you can tell it was right at the bombing of the World Trade Center, because that was on my mind. And as artists, that's a lot of times, we've got that outlet to kind of process things. This musket is completely glass. It's called This Land Is. This one is called Trail of Tears. And this is it's just about a 20-inch rondelle, but it's about 7 feet off the ground. And bottom of my heart and soul. This is halibut fishing and our bottom fishing. This piece here, the owl, is one of, you'll see, these are my first my first steps into my work. And like I said, I'll talk more about Out in Fran here, but I had been making owls for a whole week at Pilchuck. And then this guy kind of ended up in my room and was injured. And then after the second day, he kind of flew up to the window. And I said, well, if you can fly, I don't know, because the wildlife refuge place was closed on the weekend. And, but the next day he was flying around the room, and I'm like, it's time for you to go. But, you know, I can't always read the writing on the wall. I took that as a sign, and I continued to make owls. And those are some of the first works into the owl totems. The Hilaire bear that you saw on the drum earlier, again, this is just kind of a close-up of it. I'm kind of wearing a small one around my neck, as you can see. In New Zealand last year, I really got into carving jade because we kind of share that with our Pacific brethren. Again, so the bear family, like I alluded to earlier, these are some of the first bears. You can see the first ones have legs. I can't tell you how much of a pain in the ass that was, but and so this is what they've evolved into, look more like these bears that you'll see here. Bear family, polar bear, and yeah, this one I believe is available at the gallery today. I kind of threw that in there. But yeah, they've changed a little bit over time, and I don't think that not having legs makes them less bearish, because I feel like it actually kind of helps them. This is just a small video. Let's see if it plays. There you go. Kind of get the 3D in it. And part of my goal when I'm designing glass is I don't go for the hyper realistic. I kind of want the glass to remain glass looking. You can see, and like the raven totems or some of these other totems where I do powder it and it doesn't necessarily read as glass, that you know, let's see here, we'll go to the next raven totem. That's one of the first, and it's possible that it's ceramic, but I do like to have a really glassy element to it, you know, because you can't differentiate if it's ceramic or not. Why not just make it in ceramics? And I think part of what's so beautiful about glass is its ability to affect light, eat light, I've heard it said, and it just really is part of the way I look for it. Again, I'm not looking for the legs. I'm not looking to be 100% literal, but I do want it to still read as really glassy. And here's a small video of another raven totem. And these videos, my photographer lately has just started doing these versions where they spin because the internet, and that's how we're transferring information. So let's see if I can move to the next one. This is a raven comb. This is a Wecklium comb, and the Wecklium is the name of the Lummi longhouse, and it means place of frogs. The Lummi tribe, it's right in a wetlands too, but this is it's not necessarily a hair comb, it's actually a loom comb. And so this is an example of one of those pieces that is made with, pardon me, powdered glass, and could really be perceived as being ceramic. You almost might not be able to tell that it was glass, but if you look at the end of the tines, you can see that translucency. And then with heavy lighting, you can really see. So this is one of those pieces that is still glassy, but you know, and in the school of like Bill Morris, where there's things like some of the pieces are so heavily powdered, they don't necessarily read glass right away. These combs are not made for the hair. Again, they were just used for looms, for making weavings and blankets and such. And I'll kind of get into that later. Again, here he is again, quote, quote, Osium. Osium is a way of acknowledgement, or meaning like I hear you or I see you. Siem is friend, and that's in the Coast Salish Lummi. And also all the tribes around here speak at least 3 different languages. There's the local language, the trading language, Chinook jargon, and then anyone that's just kind of a little behind the scenes. But Quote Quote was you know, huge influence in my career, although I never met him. He's just, his legacy as you know, the ripples in the pond have come through my family, and I feel really honored to have his story to share a little bit. This is in Pioneer Square in downtown Seattle. That's in front of the Newman building. Oh, pardon me, the Norton building. So that's a pretty famous building in Seattle if you're an architect. This is another picture of him later in his life. This is from the inner cover of the this book that my aunt worked on about writing about his work. And you can see the Hilaire bear again. And you can kind of see the Coast Salish style, largely popularized is west or northern Vancouver Island or southeast Alaskan style, like what Preston or Tlingit or Haida artists do, quack 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 or quack udal. it's the form line, but Coast Salish. And so as we walk through downtown Seattle, you'll see that all native art in the Northwest has kind of been, that was the initial step. And now they're kind of like, well, the art of the people from Seattle is a little different, and, made largely popular by like coffee mugs and sweatshirts, and that work is incredibly beautiful. But there is definitely a movement now of Coast Salish artists. There's also a great movement of Inuit artists. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that. There's God, I'm forgetting her name. My mom really loves this block cut artist. She gets her calendar every year. But it's just it's a different style, and it has these. They're almost more similar in a way than the, in between in the Southeast and North Vancouver. Their style is in between these two styles, which are also almost a little more similar. This is the last standing totem pole of Joseph Hilaire, and it's in front of the Whatcom County Courthouse. It's been restored twice. That's a sea serpent on the top. One of his more famous poles, I meant to get more pictures of those, but I didn't, were at the World Trades Fair in 1962 in Seattle. And then he has also his one of his last poles to come down just came down in the last few years in Kobe, Japan. And my friend Sean Peterson, a carver, is going to build another pole it's our sister city, Kobe. Anyway, yeah, so this is one of my totem poles, and you can see that they're a little different. They're obviously contemporary because they're glass. I'm not trying to make exact replicas of Joe's work or anybody. I'm trying to, again, find my own voice. Here's a little video of me putting together a totem at the Museum of Glass in Tacoma. I make all the elements ahead of time when I assemble them. And it's where I worked for a long time on all the little parts. Let's see if I can keep the gear down. Does this sound okay? Is that better? All right, cool. Good. This is a forager totem. It has a mushroom on the top and a foraging basket. These are about 3 to 4 feet. This is the raven that will go on the top. And again, I make all these parts over a few different days, and then I get a big team of big strong dudes and ladies and gentlemen, and we assemble these pieces with kind of large I'm waiting for it to cool down. We'll break it off the pipe.
Now we're playing with my yacht.
And again, so they're definitely different than the totem poles that my uncle did or my grandfather did. But you can see one behind me, and I believe you guys have a really nice one in the gallery.
Yeah, we do.
Remember. And this is, again, we alluded to earlier, my Aunt Fran, Fran James. Let's see, she is, largely, responsible for helping me to find my voice. You can see her seated on one of her mountain goat wool blankets, which, they house in the Smithsonian in DC. She was a huge cultural purveyor. You can see there's a reef net captain's hat and then these baskets. But she was more than just a weaver. She was a historian and just a purveyor of the culture. She retained the language. Her son was a hereditary chief of the Lummi people, Salit, or Bill James. He just passed away last year. And so that was a big loss for us, because to lose our elders like that, they're the ones that remind us who we are. And she was so pragmatic. She's this is one of my first in the series, Aunt Fran's baskets. She, I had been blowing glass about 12 years, and she's like, well, it's great that you've achieved working with all these great artists, but what is your voice? Who are you? And you need to get out there and make these mistakes. And you don't need anyone's, but Auntie, I haven't gone to art school. I haven't gone to, and she's like, you don't need that. We make things with our hands. It's just what we do. And and that really connects me to my culture. And I feel it was really freeing to hear that. I work and a community where half of us are from elite art schools around the globe, literally, and it's largely intimidating, you know what I mean? And as an artist, again, I always say trying to find your voice, but just to get out there and make mistakes when the bar is so high, it has such an expensive cost of entry to be a glass artist. Those were really powerful words for me to hear. So, and this basket I made right after she passed away, I really wish she could have seen one, because she was, again, very pivotal in me kind of embarking on this journey of making my work and helping to bring my ancestors forward and tell their story in a different contemporary way. What I like about working with glass is its permanence. This is a fern basket. You can see the fern pattern in the gray, which is a real traditional Coast Salish or Twana style of baskets, which is a Southern Puget Sound. But the glass, even though this is a pretty fragile piece and you don't want your cat bumping into it, even if it breaks, it will still maintain part of its original form. Even though glass is fragile, it's still also very resilient and strong. So when I'm studying at the Corning Museum of Glass and I'm staring at this 4,000-year-old bust of Cleopatra, it could have been made yesterday. And that is something that my forefathers in the Coast Salish style, they didn't have. Everything is made with natural resources. Very few things of the art, what does remain is in a museum, in decay, and studied largely just for those sort of purposes. And so I just feel like there's a huge power in working with such a resilient material. There's that smoke basket, star basket. This is my sister Ray setting up a corn festival basket we made for someone in New Mexico, and God, I wish I would have kept that one. It was so cool. And this is basically how a basket is made. There'll be a little video, but it's a mosaic that we lay out of all these different canes. So you can see there's probably 10 different cane poles. So before you even start putting the basket together, there's probably 5 hours of preparation, just making these little glass rods, breaking them up, and then laying them out takes another hour or two. And then turning it into a bubble, which you'll see in this video here. See here, press play. Look at it right on this, and you can see how that you can roll the little canes up. It's fused into a plate. We'll take that tube, tap it on the clear glass. That turns it into a bubble. Pull up so it can be inflated. I'll put powder in the low part and then wipe it away a lot like scrim cloth. Put another layer of fresh glass on it, and you can see I have a team that I work with. No way I can do this by myself. The choreography and the coordination it takes. I got one person turning, putting in the line, someone else turning. My good friend Greg Owen is taking the plane, just little painting around the edge of the trap. And it is really, it's so, I'm really happy with it. I never really know it's so volatile when you're working with it hot, and there's so many things that can go wrong. So whenever you see a finished piece, it's the end of, you just know that it wasn't yeah, and again, so then it probably takes me to my next little series here, and this is the Evergreen Longhouse in the South Puget Sound. I feel really honored to be with a group of venerable elders. I'm kind of the young buck in this group, I think, because I taught glass and it's so unique and kind of new to Native culture. This is called the Pacific Rim and Indigenous Gathering. A lot of these artists in this picture are, there's Dempsey Bob, Yvonne Peterson, Nora Naranjo, Marvin Begay, Marcel, Larry McNeil, Ed Demoni, and like I said, these might not be people in your world, but this is a huge honor for me to be with this group. My Aunt Mary Ellen Hilaire started that program, or was her vision, the Evergreen Longhouse. And during that time, they brought indigenous creators from around the Pacific all, and I feel really powerful. I feel real honored to be, I feel real honored to be connected to these institutions. This is at the Burke Museum, the Longhouse. Like I said, so many of the artifacts are in people's private collections, or you know, they're decaying as they do over time. And I feel real grateful that the museums have done a great job of, you know, repatriating some work, but also allowing Native artists to come and study in their archives. This is a Coast Salish rattle. These are all the canoe paddles, and they can't have all this on display, so they've opened up their archives for natives to study. This is my sister again, and it is really a treat to see this history. This is a clam basket from the Lummi people, and you can see it's so porous to let the water and let the sand filter out of the clams. This is a clam basket that my sister Ray made with the glass shells inside. It's all steel. And again, in the first couple slides, you saw the patriarch of our family, or Heitaluk, Frank Hilaire. You can see here in 1890, teaching the settlers how to reef net fish, because one of the great commodities that the tribes here had was their ability to harvest salmon. And the winters aren't as cold as they are there, but people were really struggling to make it. And so they had a commodity of exchange with the settlers, and that was reef net fishing, and the salmon, their relationship to the salmon. And there, in this picture, you can see my great-great-grandfather and the chief, Al Martin, are they're teaching the settlers how to reef net fish. This is a sketch by a woman named Hillary Stewart from Vancouver. She's had made a great book about this, and this little illustration just kind of explains how reef net fishing goes. There's two canoes, and the shwala, or the net, suspended between the two canoes. They kind of create a false floor that drives the salmon off of the bottom of the sound between the two canoes, and they draw them together and capture them. You'll see more of that coming. This is in 1890 at Cherry Point. This is right before it was made illegal for natives to reef net fish, and it consequently coincided with the beginning of the cannery reef net fishing industry in the area. And this is from 1930, when it was made illegal overall for all people to do. It kind of went the way of seine netting. But I want to kind of change the story. So back to that first picture of Heitaluk and the model. This, if you can see to the left side, is a reef net anchor, and there's one sort of to the middle right. This is an actual reef net anchor stone that I studied at the Burke Museum. And these are some of my reef net anchors that I make. It's a hand woven cedar rope. And what I've learned from just going through, and, you know, obviously working with glass is different, but just working with the natural fibers, I've woven a reef net. This is another stone. It's just, this is all these people must have been doing to sustain themselves. It was a full-time job, and all hands on deck. It takes me like a week, no short of a week, to weave 40 feet of rope, and they must have needed thousands of feet of rope. It's so humbling to see their process. This is one of the salmon, chenot, as you say in Coast Salish. It sounds really French, but the chenot, or the chenot, is where the word comes from. Is you know, that's their relationship with the salmon was huge. You know, it's they're sort of the original conservationist. Here's a small video from the Museum of Glass of making one of the salmon. Today, my days are a little different, but a lot of it is the same. As an artist, I'm driven to create work. That was a PBS highlight thing, and sorry, this is the only file I had. But you can see Brett is dipping into the furnace to get a ladle of fresh glass, and I'll come and I'll dip the tail of the salmon in there to get this really nice, this nice even layer of clear glass over the tail. I just couldn't figure out a better way to do it, and I was pretty proud of myself to bring a new technique to my world anyway. And shaping the tail here, and each one of these salmon is blown, and it took, I've made a bunch of fish, but they finally gotten to a place where I really enjoy how these will go. You'll see this in this next slide. You'll see how they're displayed. On the other side of it, there are two knobs where it's mounted on the wall. Let's see here. Where's the cursor? There it is. And this is an installation of the Chanel at Washington State University in Eastern Washington and in their library. And so I'm working on this. Is not sure yet. Nobody signed off on it, but this is very possibly what my approach will be to the Seattle Aquarium, but probably suspended as opposed to wall mounted. This is one of my apprentices, Doug, helping me with a net at my reef net installation. You can see a few of the anchors here. And this is at the Bellevue Art Museum in Bellevue, Washington, which is just across the lake from Seattle. It's kind of Bill Gates town over there. So this little detail in the Schwalla or the reef net is it's a willow bark hoop. And this was allowed to let the first of the king or the tip of the spear of the salmon people to go through to just ensure that those genes would continue. And, there was again, such a reverence. And when the reef netters would catch their first haul of the season, they would go back and have ceremony for a week on the shore, just feasting and preparing salmon. And that would allow a week of the beginning of the run to just to continue on. And again, each catch, there's a few of the big ones that get out of the very front of the net. And that was just a big part of their conservation, and Lummi today, they stopped what's called the coal train at Cherry Point, where the reef net fishing is. And we have an aquaculture department, which is, now, even though because of the tribes and they work with restoring these salmon spawning grounds, their relationship with the flora and fauna is so big. And again, they're some of the original conservationists. And I think that is kind of finding legs these days. This is a Salish spirit right here. And this is a woven cedar bark hat with a glass skull. Here's another. These are Coast Salish headdresses, which are a little different. Obviously, everybody's really familiar with the Sioux or the Plains Indians headdresses. The ones here are a little different. This is a painting by a famous English painter named Paul Kane. And this is a painting of Cowichan women, another Coast Salish tribe, but in Vancouver, actually. And you can see the small dog next to the loom. That is a Coast Salish woolly dog, or a skukka, as it's called. And this is the only known picture of a descendant of a skukka or a skukka in about 1855, some thereabouts, if they even had cameras. So this is, they're a lot like Pomeranians, and their fur was used to make the Coast Salish blankets. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that the Royal Museum in Vancouver, along with the Burke Museum here, has done DNA testing to confirm what the native people have been saying, that their traditional blankets were made with dog's fur. This is, and combined with mountain goat wool and cedar fibers to keep the moths away. But a little cool highlight of this one is this red stripe. And so the Hudson Bay Company would bring these red traditional sheep's wool blankets to trade. And the natives here would take a whole red blanket and just disassemble it and weave it back in to their patterns to have these nice red highlights in their blankets. These slides aren't showing up very well, sorry. But you can see, yeah, the red and black. And yeah, this is one of the ones from the museum. It's been repaired, but you can see this is, with the DNA testing, they can confirm that the majority of this blanket is dog's fur as opposed to mountain goat wool or sheep's wool. This is, I've just started this series. This is one of the first pieces of the skukka panels, and I'm working on, I need 40 more, no small feat, for my museum show. I'm working with a bunch of Coast Salish weavers to display in the show, and I'd like to collaborate with some of them, and their contemporary patterns are just mind-blowing and colorful explosions. And so these are based on the more traditional ones, but some of the contemporary Coast Salish weaving it just blows my mind. And so I'd like to work more, and again, like Aunt Fran and her work, and these other people in the Coast Salish tradition that carry on these traditions. I'm am largely inspired by. This is some of my latest work, is working with the tribes. This is the Lummi Youth Academy and Lummi High School. This is the first year at the Pilchuck Glass School that my sister and I, with the work of Doug Burgess, a guy that helps me. He's Haida, and Adam Burgess too. And these are, we brought in the high school students and then the Lummi Youth Academy to take classes at Pilchuck. That's the first year. This is Naya from Portland. And even though glass isn't, God, it's such a hard medium to learn. This is my sister teaching. She's a great teacher. It's one of those things that, you know, people held the door open for me. If it weren't for people like Paul Marioni and Rob Adamson and Dale Chihuly, when I was a little rough around the edges, kind of like, hey, come on in here. And, you know, the fact that these kids may not all become glass artists is true, but glass has an amazing way of taking you out of yourself and working in a team and putting you in the moment. You can get hot. It's burning. You feel like you're going to faint, and you really rely on the people you're working with. If you're not present, it hurts. And small story on a side note, these two girls are both from Lummi, both aware of each other their whole lives. They go to school in the same sort of portable system, and the schools have really changed at Lummi more recently, like with the Northwest Indian College. But these gals, you know, have been aware of each other their whole lives, but they're just from different families. And that is huge on the reservation. There's age-old things where we don't talk to those guys and they don't talk to us. And during this session of just over a weekend and a few days, these gals, I mean, I don't know if they became best friends, but they're never, you know, that for me was the big takeaway. That these guys got out there and were brave enough to try something very difficult and maybe not succeed. Whose level of success are we talking about? That was one of the best takeaways. And you know, working with the youth is largely rewarding for me. This is the first year. This is the second year, and these works. This is Dale's project, the Hilltop project in Tacoma, was largely responsible for me. It was, you know, inspirational. And, you know, I've worked with a lot of these guys from the Hilltop program. I hire and pay with my green money today. And it's not saying that every one of these at-risk youth or Native students are all going to become glass artists, but it is a great way to share what I've learned. And that's what I can do. This is, again, this is the Hilltop program more recently. That picture before was from about 20 years ago. This is more, you know, the program has become self-sustaining and is 25 years in the making. And those are the other things about Dale's legacy that, like, you know, we are all really familiar with his work. It's around the world, but the Pilchuck legacy, the Hilltop legacy, those are just side notes of somebody who really has just given back in a large way. This is my family today. You can see my kids and my wife and my cousins and my little cousins and my little cousins. And that's my dog. And that's the end. Thanks for that.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I enjoyed that very much. I love that. Yeah, very, very interesting. Wow. You know, I think what really touched me was talking about the relationships. I mean, obviously your family are very dear to you and very important, but the team, sounds like the teamwork and the relationships and Pilchuck and Dale really made such a difference in your life, and you're passing that on now, which is pretty incredible.
Definitely trying. One little class at a time. They canceled our class this year for obvious reasons, but we are getting some traction and there's some funding, and you know, we're in the Pacific Northwest, and some of the richest people that come to mind in the world kind of live right here. And if they could just help out our little program a little bit, you know.
Are they support? Do you get that support?
Yeah, there's been a large interest. I feel like it is getting traction. You know, obviously
Right.
Dale and Leslie have been hugely supportive. but I think as Pilchuck grows and Amazon, I know that my sister has worked with the White Light Foundation. It's through another company called Glassy Baby. They helped fund the native outreach program at Pilchuck, and we're just we're moving along. And again, even though they canceled this year, I don't feel like it's the end of things. So I'm excited that we're still kind of just getting our traction, like I'd say.
Well, you've been on a good journey and you're on the right track, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's hope.
I know there'll be a lot of questions at the end. Before we do that, I know you've got some images of some of your available work, and maybe you want to put that up, Dan, and then we're going to let people ask you some questions. How would that be?
Awesome. So do it, stop sharing.
Yeah, please, if you don't mind stopping the screen share, and I'll put up images. And if you do have any questions for Dan, feel free to use the Q&A or the chat feature at the bottom of the screen.
Okay, are you talking to me? I'll have to learn how to use this. Oh, I see the Q&A thing. Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, smoke basket.
And Fran.
Yeah, and Fran. It's the one that's behind you. Huckleberry basket.
Right.
That one's got a great color. It's hard to photograph. Cowichan bear, grizzly, blanket bear, lightning bear.
Yeah, I love that bear.
Yeah, the patterns are one of those ones that has less glassiness to it, but it is such a great pattern. Yeah, so that's my Italian cane techniques there.
Yeah, that has so much movement, the way you've created that.
Yeah, the rainbow bear, that's a hot one too.
Beautiful.
Yeah, the northern.
And where did you develop the idea of the signature? You said that the circle with the dot is your signature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell us about that, where that came from?
Well, it's a lot like a chop or a maker's mark or a wax seal. I do sign them with a Dremel. I write my name, but that's the symbol. I wish I could remember how long I've been making it. Since I was a little kid, there's some of my first drawings and my first linoleum cuts is when I was a young little guy that my aunt still has is of that. I had forgot about it, and I was at her house and I saw it. I'm like, God, even back then when I was 7 years old, I was still onto it. But it's like a very reminiscent of a Coast Salish eye form, or there's just something pleasing to it, something pleasing about it to me. As like a pi ratio, or as a elliptical planets. There's a lot of different things that it speaks to me as it's just become the mark of the beast. I don't know. It's on all my work.
Yeah, I like it too.
The only thing I don't put it on is the baskets, because it just doesn't work with that. You can see it in the bottom left of that totem. Yeah, and that's a totem you guys have.
Okay.
That's a really
Yes.
nice one. Yeah. I remember that's a really tall one. And
Very
one
tall.
behind me is 24, 26 inches, but I remember that being closer to 30 something. So that's a big one. Owl totems. Yeah.
And the owls, yes.
Yeah, and I put that little picture of him in my cabin just because, I don't know. Like I said, it was just those were some of the first works, after talking with Aunt Fran before the baskets were the owls. Yeah, this raven was in the slideshow. And so that pattern you can see on the raven is very similar to the lightning bear, but it is made with canes that are twisted opposite ways, clockwise and counterclockwise. And when they're laid down, they make that herringbone pattern.
A beautiful pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm proud of that too. I really like these, like I said, I put that slide of the first Raven, some of the first Ravens I put in there. I mean, they don't look anything like the ones they do today, but they evolve. They take on a life of their own. And that's something which is really cool about working with glass and a lot of the animal forms that I work on. I mean, who knows? I get this wad of glass and I got this team hired to all be there the same day. I'll see you at 7:30, and you know, we're going to try to make this, but what's going to happen is what happens. And it's really cool. You know, I've got a framework of what I'm going to make, but it's really nice to see the piece kind of come to life in front of you as you're working, and it kind of takes on a personality of its own, because glass isn't absolutely what I want to happen. It's like, okay, this is what the glass is allowing you to do today. And I like that sort of relationship and working with the material.
Well, your work is definitely unique to you. It isn't like anyone else's work at all. You have your own influences, and, you know, you were inspired from what to me is so meaningful is how important your family was in your heritage and how it shows in all of your work. I also was quite touched when your aunt Fran said to you, you have to find your own voice. And that's really what you've done, Dan. I mean, you're, as I say, with the uniqueness, it's your voice and only your voice.
Yeah, and I'm ever grateful for that. And sometimes I've even got to be reminded, you know, I'll try something. And you said, when I got into this work, I tried a lot of different avenues. I was just thinking about it the other day, the sheer tonnage of glass I'd made before I kind of found what it was that I was doing, but I had to make all those things and make all those mistakes to get where I am. So I am grateful for them, but it is, like I said, once I started on this work of, you know, where I'm at today, and, you know, with the influence from my family, it just seemed like such a natural fit that, like, when you put on the right slippers, you know, you're like, well, okay, here's where we're going. And, but even in that, you still got to push the walls a little bit, try new things, get out of your comfort zone. And glass is really a great way of doing that.
Well, I have more questions, but I think we should see who else has some questions to ask you right now.
So Dan,
I want to thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for everything you did today. It was just an absolutely wonderful presentation, and we learned a lot. Really wonderful. But Dan, do you have some questions there that other people would like to ask?
I do. This is a little confusing with two Dans, but I do have some questions for you, Dan. Can you just tell us the Clearly Indigenous show, where and when is that?
I believe it opens up in March. That's the latest date in the 100+ emails I have at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture in Santa Fe. The book is available now on Amazon. It really features Preston. I mean, just most natives. There's a native guy named Tony Hohola who started the Taos Pueblo project with Dale. Dale actually, I think he did teach at IAIA in Santa Fe for a while, once upon a time, and they just gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award last year. But, you know, Santa Fe has a large Indigenous artists. I mean, it's just a gallery haven, but these museums are great down there too. And Dale's connection had, you know, that from those first interactions in the late 80s with Tony Hohola, there's definitely some native glass down there. And then again, I'd say Preston has been a huge mentor to me here. And, you know, and I'm hopefully creating a few more native glass artists, or at least opening the door and trying to, you know, trying to build that legacy. And so that's really featured in the book.
What's the name of the book again, Dan?
Clearly Indigenous. And it's one of those things I'm worried about choking on the name when you're asking me. But that's what it is. Yeah, Clearly Indigenous. And I'm sure there's a subtitle to it too. It's written by Letitia Chambers for any, more clarification.
And Amazon.
On Amazon, yeah.
Okay, that's
excellent.
Good.
Margaret would like to know if you have any plans to come back to Corning in the next few years.
Interesting. Yes, I have. And so my residency was canceled in April for obvious reasons. It was a month-long residency, which is, I mean, a month of glass blowing is a huge amount of, it's a large undertaking. So I had everything packed up in, I had a shipping container. I mean, I was loaded up to go, and literally it shut down that week. And so we just have been talking about rescheduling, and it's either going to be either November this year, if we can pull that together, I'll have a month at Corning, or in 2022 in the springtime. And, you know, residencies like that, you know, are, I mean, the ripples in the pond from those things are huge. You just don't know. I mean, it's just the freedom to explore. And with glass, it's one of those things, like, I don't disappear into my private painting studio with a cup of tea and leisurely put on whatever music I want to listen to. It's more like it's this hectic fire drill when I get up in the morning, like, gotta turn everything on, gotta go to the shop. I've got 4 guys that said they're gonna show up, not too hungover and on time. And, you know, we're gonna like listen to whatever this, you know, we take a poll, and even though it is my work and I'm the designer, it is a collaboration, because any of these 4 guys and gals I'm working with could break the piece. It could just break on its own through negligence of mine or error. And so glass is really one of these things. And then it just costs thousands of dollars a day to just show up and maybe get one, you know? And so that's the behind the scenes that, you know, a lot of times people don't see, but which is so dynamic. And what I love about it is the teamwork, the community. And I'm at this age of my life, again, where, you know, I'm not even a hobby gardener. I can't even do that right. But this community in glass, I mean, I don't have time to socialize, as many of you guys know, with kids. And if it wasn't for the glass community, I've got a global network of people. I mean, I've traveled around the world, worked in Asia, New Zealand, Europe, all, you know, Mexico. I mean, I've done a slew of traveling and working, and we all speak this common language of glass. I just got to be like, type, hey, I'm coming to town. Here's my guest house. Here's my room. And to be part of a community like that, I just is, like I said, I can't tell you how privileged I feel to know that we, as glassmakers, often live in this really small, tight-knit, but also global and well-connected community.
Yeah, I saw that as well. I see it even as a dealer, how it is such a tight community. It's different than any other field of art, where it's so collaborative, and how supportive one artist is to another artist, and the goodwill and the good feelings for everyone to succeed. It's pretty unusual, very unique.
It's one of those things, if you aren't a contributor or come at it with bad intent, I mean, it just it weeds out a lot of the other stuff. If you're not willing to show up early and leave late, and there's just probably not a spot for you. So it has that quality to it.
Did you have a favorite country? If you've traveled all over the world, is there a favorite place?
No. I think we're all just, it's, you know, I mean, I've got some I'd like to go. You know, God, I really love Prague, just because of its, you know, the whole medieval Gothic. I mean, I really love Taiwan. That was incredible too, you know, and I worked with the indigenous people of Taiwan at one of my residencies there. I mean, New Zealand or Aotearoa. I'm really connected through the Evergreen Longhouse. We've had these indigenous Pacific Rim gatherings, and I've gone to 2 now. I think the next one is in Hawaii. And just like you said, artists that are open to collaborating, it just comes so natural too for glass artists, because I literally need 4 people to be on the same page every time I work. And, you know, it just really comes natural to glass artists. But in the indigenous community as a whole, like I said, I really felt uplifted by making these connections.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from Steve. First of all, Steve says he loves his totem pole.
Oh, hi, Scott. Hi, Steve.
It will be part of Clearly Indigenous. And Steve is from Santa Fe. And
Yeah,
he would like to know where your sister's piece will be installed.
at MIAC, at the museum there, in the courtyard outside, I believe. Don't misquote me, but that's
Over that.
what I hear from a reliable source.
Excellent. Ava says she's intrigued with your raven totems. Is the raven symbolic of your indigenous culture? Could you please describe briefly, talk briefly about the raven? She asked, is it ceramic on top? But I know you touched on that it is glass.
It is all glass, yes. And I mean, I have a little blurb I write about everything, but like I said, I just shoot from the hip better than anything else. And I feel like, I mean, if you've ever been in the presence of ravens, they're definitely, it will not be denied. You know, they're a powerful creature. We have ravens in the Northwest here, and there's smaller ones. The ravens that are in the Washington State area are, so like the Southwest, the ones that are in New Mexico when I go there, or up in Alaska. I mean, God, they're huge, first of all, and they're by no means a crow. And even though they're related, they're just so intelligent or just so inquisitive. And I mean, it's just like, God, even when I'm talking to people, I'm looking for eye contact, right? And when I seen one of these animals, and I mean, we're obviously looking at each other, and I spend a lot of time in the woods foraging for mushrooms or cedar bark to make the ropes and baskets and stuff like that. And you know, when I'm out there looking, I listen for the raven, and if I hear them, that's the way I'm going. You know, and they are ever known as the trickster, and they're not. You know, there's what's the Quoth the Raven, Edgar Allan Poe. I think the raven's a little different here, but I think the raven across all cultures is largely undeniable as just a powerful totem or enigmatic creature.
Remember, Preston told us the story when we visit with him. Yes.
Yeah. And that we have the same story. That's one of the things that like Coast Salish and the Northern Vancouver, I mean, we have similar stories. And in the Southwest, it's the coyote, and it's this trickster that, like, you know, is a guide, you know. And like I said, I can't always read the writing on the walls, but when an owl stays in my cabin for a couple days, I'm like, I'm gonna keep making owls. And
right, exactly, that's a sign.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Okay.
And Sandra would have asked to change rooms.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't stay in the room with the owl.
Well, and what I heard is, like, so it was hurt when it came in. I thought it was gonna die. And I woke up the next day, and it was like perched, and it had gotten up, and it was sitting on the chair, but it didn't wake up, and it was just there. I woke up another time, it was just it was okay, and then it was awake, and it was staring at me, but then it just slept for you know, the rest of the day. And you know, I couldn't get a hold of the wildlife place, and then when I finally did get a hold of a wildlife person after I let it fly out of the cabin, she's like, "Oh, that's a barred owl. You're lucky you didn't claw your eyes out while you're sleeping."
Oh,
like, ruthless. The barred owls are the ones that attack joggers a lot.
Oh.
And a lot of times they'll take their hats off. They're really territorial. And God, I mean, I held it in my hand, and it, like, I could feel its talons. I'm like, man, that could mess you up, dude. And like, it was holding on, but I'm like, yeah, of course it can hold on really well because it sleeps holding onto a branch. I'm like, it was it was quite an experience. And
yeah, I wouldn't have been good under that situation for sure.
Wildlife experience. Yeah.
No, that's not me. Okay. Dan, do you have another?
We do. Someone would like to know if you could tell us a little bit about the raven over your shoulder.
I believe that's from one of my uncles that carved that. It's I don't even know. It's not a drum. I think it's just a wall piece. Gary Hilaire. Hilaire is the large family I come from at Lummi. Friday, we're a smaller group of that by marriage, but the Hilaire bear and the Hilaire. So, like, to be Hilaire is a lot like being a Smith or a McDonald, as we talked about in Canada. Yeah, and so you know, my great-great-grandfather raised 22 kids, and all those kids had, you know, 10, 12 kids of their own, and so it's hard to not hit a rock. If you threw a rock, it's hard to not hit a Hilaire up there, and so we've got a large family, but I believe that's one of my Uncle Gary Hilaire's carvings of a raven.
You ever have family reunions where everyone gets together?
Well, the Longhouse and the canoe journey, I mean, was just incredible. My cousin Daryl Hilaire, his company, Children of the Setting Sun, so it's not the dance troupe. So they've continued that dance troupe, and the Children of the Setting Sun. That's Frank Hilaire and Joe Hilaire's dance troupe. But one of the big quotes from Frank Hilaire, Hey Talak, was "Keep my fires burning." So we still, like I said, got 10 cousins named Joe, 10 cousins named Edna. We tell these same stories, and that's what keeps the culture alive. And you know, my cousin Lawrence, he's one of the spiritual leaders of our community, and the Black Hawk dancers. Yeah, they're still dancing today, and so that is it's just really cool to see, you know. And now we're on this digital format, and you know, if you go and see Daryl, Children of the Setting Sun, he just made a video about MLK, and you know, the Dalai Lama came through a while ago. It's just really moving, and it's great to see, you know, the rest of the family embracing these other avenues of you know, just outreach in a contemporary form. And Daryl's really good at doing that.
Very interesting. Very nice. Okay.
Great.
Dan,
We have a question from Jody. Jody, one of your friends back at Chihuly.
Oh, Jody. Hey, Jody.
Jody would like to know, what year was the pouring of the glass paddle on the totem pole at Pilchuck?
Oh, come on, trivia. How am I gonna get? I'm gonna get this wrong. But 2000. I mean, so Pilchuck this is their 50th year. I want to say maybe it's 2002. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm joking, because they were going to they're going to have a cleanup on the totem pole. They're going to restore it potentially this year. I know that the class I had to cancel because Pilchuck coincided with my museum shows now that have all pushed back at the same time this coming year. I had to cancel teaching up there, and then they canceled the class too. I was going to teach during the native session, the first session this year at Pilchuck. Preston was going to come back with Joe David, one of his teachers, and you know, do some restorative work to the totem pole. And so I wish I knew for sure. Feel like it might be 20 years.
There was a note. Actually, Jody sent a note in saying she thinks it's 2001, 2002.
Thank you. Yes, that's
There
right.
you go. Just to help you out.
No, yeah, well, real-time fact checkers of the internet. Thank you. Heishka.
I also saw a note, from Jack Cooperstone. Jack sent a note that he was with my group when I visited you a year and a half ago.
Oh, you guys came, yeah.
And he was at your studio with us, and how much he enjoyed that. It was, yeah, so he wanted to mention it to you, how impressed he was with you.
Before we get to our last question, we have confirmation that the totem pole was 2001 from David Willis. So,
oh, okay.
That seems to be a good authority. So before I get to our last question, just want to let you know we've had a ton of great comments come in from people about how much they loved your presentation and how your work has evolved over time, and hear about your family and influences. So the last question comes from Mary. Mary's interested in knowing your thoughts on Murano glass. And have you been to Murano before and seen those studios at work?
So Murano glass, man, I can't tell you how grateful. So I've got this history that you've all heard about my family more directly, and then co-sailors at large. And you know, but how remiss would we not be to mention the, you know, the legacy of Venetian glass and glass through the European network into America. And you know, Murano glass, it's huge. You know, I went to Murano in 2005, I believe, and I went there in August, not knowing that that's when all the shops were going to be closed. I was ready to buy a bunch of tools and do that, but just in the small time I've spent, you know, working at Dale's and then at Pilchuck, you know, I've been able to study with guys like Lino and Pino Signoretto, and just their legacy is huge. This, you know, in contrast, I mean, just because I got to mention it now, and the Blown Away thing that has just come out on Netflix, I'm not sure if everybody's aware of,
Right.
but you know, and in contrast to that, on Amazon, there's Lino Tagliapietra's Making of a Maestro, and that's just a huge legacy. I feel like I would lean more towards that as part of our glass legacy, but the American studio glass movement as a whole is you know, completely indebted to Murano and the innovations that they made over, you know, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. And you know, that's, like I said, what's so cool is being able to go to any of these different places around the country and sort of speak the language of glass. You know, it's like politics aside, religion aside, you know, the language we love, and you know, the objects of our affection are largely this glass working that we all sort of speak together.
You are a great spokesman, not just for yourself, but for all artists. And, you know, a great spokesperson for your family. The way you've carried on. Well,
I left out all the rough stuff. I'm sure in the comments.
yeah, well, like with everyone's family, though, with everyone's family, but Aunt Fran would be really proud, eh?
Let's hope. Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so I can't thank you enough. I really enjoyed all of this because
thanks,
even though we talked a couple of times, we didn't really talk about what you were going to be saying. And it was great that your friends, there were a few of your friends from Chihuly who joined us today, and
Awesome.
other artists who were here to listen to you, and our clients. And it was just a wonderful visit.
Well, I'm sure I did. Yeah, thank you again. You guys, you have done a lot for me. It was thanks for giving me this opportunity, and
Right.
Largely personal, but you know, just shoot from the hip. That's all you got.
Well, we could keep going if we had more questions, but I wonder, Dan, are any questions before we say goodbye?
I think we have covered them all.
Yeah, we have, I think. Okay. Anything you want to ask, Dan?
No.
The other
Thanks for all your support, you know, and
no,
I just look forward to seeing you guys when we do, you know.
well, you said you're going to Corning perhaps in November, so
Yeah.
you should know that Corning is a 4-hour drive from Toronto, because before we got started today, you said you'd love to come and visit. So there's your opportunity.
Well, there's probably a train, right?
I'm sure there's a train or there's a bus.
Yeah.
I've taken the bus once.
I am looking forward to visit, and then I'll just plug this book here at the last moment. No Great Mischief, Alexander McLeod, Trillium Award winner, and that's I'm doing the Cape Breton tour when I come.
Oh yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to say before we go? It's all yours.
No, thanks again, and I hope everybody's doing well and is finding peace in this time.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Good.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Okay, take care.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.
Bye.